Awesome. And I want to thank you so much for coming out tonight. And I want to introduce to you two of, as I said, my favorite people, my favorite comedians. They are filling theaters across the country. They've been on every comedy TV show that you've seen. And one of them was even in Fair City. So, yeah, woo, can we get a bigger woo? Thanks. Yeah, he's literally standing outside the door there. So would you please give a huge, trim welcome to the brilliant Willa White and Eric Lalor. Hello, chaps.
Hello, Dermot.
How you
Welcome
doing?
to County Meath.
Hello, Trim.
You're looking very trim.
This is where all the barbers live. Trim. All the lesbians live in Kilcock.
Can we turn off Willa's mic, please?
And all the plumbers live in Duleek. Good night and God bless.
Lads, welcome to the Mindful Podcast.
We are very excited to be here, Dermot.
Yeah.
Very excited, aren't you, Willie?
Oh, seriously.
Yeah, I know.
Couldn't sleep.
Yeah. We're here actually since 5 o'clock. Yeah, we, getting mindful, getting
This
really
morning.
mindful. Yeah, we were waiting. We thought, being the festival, being guests at this amazing podcast show, that there might be, free dinner or something, or a few drinks. How wrong we were.
Yeah. No, it's
Mind,
great. It's
mindful, belly empty.
Be better if it was belly full podcast, wouldn't it? Especially for me.
How was your Halloweens?
Mine was, I was gigging, pretty much Halloween. And to be honest with you, I know on Púca is all about Halloween. I fucking hate Halloween. I really hate it. I hate it. And everything it has to do with Halloween. We actually turned off the lights in the house.
Well, you're one of those families.
Yeah, we just went, you know what, I'm not able for that anymore. It's okay when you have your own kids doing it. But when my kids are all grown up now, so it was turn off the lights. It was the same when the TV inspector's knocking on the door, the license inspector. Quick, turn off the lights and hide behind the couch. And that's what we did.
Are you sure you're not getting the two of them confused? Like when the inspector comes, you give him some sweets into his bag. There you go, son.
And now it's all Americanized, isn't it? It's all trick or treat. Like back in our day, it was help the Halloween party. And you got an apple or a monkey nut, if you were lucky.
Were you born in black and white? That's very depressing, isn't it? An apple.
An apple, yeah. That was it, yeah.
How about you, Willa? Were you kinder to the neighbourhood children?
No, I didn't. I left the house as well. We went out for dinner on Halloween night, myself and my future wife. Yeah, so we just went. I know, girl, she's missed the train. Yeah, they don't call me Willie for nothing.
But the dinner.
I'm not joking. It's not huge, but it'll fill a pram.
Yeah. But the dinner you were out for was just an apple in a bowl of water, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Two of you popping your heads into it.
I don't really like Halloween either. It's not one of them. I like Christmas. Christmas is good. I like Easter, Halloween. And it wasn't that we kind of went, we're going to go out because there's going to be kids knocking on the door. And I usually do the tricks, and they don't like that. They all just want sweets. So I'd be there like kind of, doing that with me thumb and that. They're kind of going, where's the sweets? And then you've got the kids that go, we don't want sweets from Aldi or Lidl's.
Yeah.
We want branded sweets.
Entitlement.
Entitlement, exactly,
yeah. That's what's wrong with it. In country.
Yeah. And then I just do the best trick then when they say that. I just say, when you see this trick, and I just disappear and shut the door. Yeah.
That's the way to deal with that, Willa.
That's the way we roll.
Yeah. How was your Halloween, Dermot?
It was fine. I made the mistake of not charging my electric doorbell. So we were a good sort of 5 hours into the trick-or-treating time. I was saying, geez, it's very quiet. No kids have called. That's because they're all pressing a useless piece of plastic outside the door and going, there's nobody there.
Adiel, we forgot to charge our electric doorbell. I'll be using that one next year.
It's very hard to charge a knocker on your door, though, isn't it, really, when you think about it? You're just kind of hitting it.
Were you mentioning something about Halloween when I met you outside in terms of something?
Yeah, I was telling you earlier on that I'm one of these fellas that gets sick really, really easy at a fun fair. So if anything goes like around like that or around like this, I can't get on it. I get really, really sick and really ill. And I get seasickness very quickly as well. So you'll never see me in a boat, or you'll never see me at a fun fair going around this way, as I said, horizontally or vertically. But years ago, I was in Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and I was about 14, 15 years of age, and I went away with a friend of mine. And anything I was seeing that was going around this way or around, I was going, no, I'm not getting on that. I'm not getting on that. So there wasn't really a lot of varied things for me to get on. So we went into Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and we seen this ride, and it was called the Haunted Swing. That was the name of it. And my mate Andrew says to me, this looks right up your street, the Haunted Swing. What about this? And I went, well, it can't be too bad. It's a swing, and it's haunted. So what happened was I walked into this big room, and it was like an old haunted sitting room of a house with cobwebs, and it was just a big, huge bench that seated about 30 or 40 people. So there was about 25, 30 of us on it.
Sure, you weren't in an old folks' home.
It was kind of like that, yeah, without the smell of urine. And so we're all on the bench, and next of all, the door locks, and these lights come on, kind of haunted lights, and this guy's going, welcome to the haunted swing. And this thing, so the swing start going like this. And I'm looking at me, mate, and I'm going, this is grand. But then all of a sudden, the swing start going right around like that. And I looked at me, mate, and I says, Andrew, I'm getting off this. But unbeknownst to me, it was an optic illusion. And it was the room that was going around. So when I jumped off, I slid straight down the ceiling, and I'm grabbing onto the furniture, the lampshade off the walls, and I'm screaming, turn that fucking thing off! And everyone that was on the swing were just drinking their tears, laughing at me. And eventually I got out, but I still see me mate every now and again. He goes, remember the haunted swing? Well, yeah, it was the room. If I'd have literally just closed my eyes, I'd have been just like this, just sitting on a chair or on a bench. It was the room that was going around, yeah. So that's...
I love the fact that you broke the chandelier and all. Yeah, man, open the door going, what the fuck are you doing?
That's why I said, please stop the lights.
You have to love the 80s and 90s where you can just casually let yourself out of the ride.
Yeah.
Like, you're meant to be locked into these things, you know. It's like halfway through the roller coaster, I'll just get off here, lads. It's like, it's not a bus.
Well, our good friend Jason Bourne, I saw his Instagram there recently. He was talking about, I don't know if any of you was ever in the old Butlins, the Mosney. Do you remember that thing, the Space Roundup, where you used to stand up in a cage and just through gravity, you stuck to the bleeding thing. There was no straps or nothing. And that's what Jay was. There was no health and safety back on. There was a bloke with a fire going, yeah, go on there, yeah. And the thing is spinning around and go upside down. And you were just like that into the cage like this. But now when you're on a ride, like you've about 18 different seatbelts, you've a crash helmet, you're signing insurance policies. Back then it was great, wasn't it?
Brilliant,
the danger.
yeah.
The danger.
I remember I was, you'd find this hard to believe, but I was quite a small child.
No way, Dermot.
Yeah.
Go away.
And I was always so small and slim that, you know, when they put the thing down, and then, you know, everyone else is like, oh, that's a bit tight, isn't it? And I'd be like, no. And you knew if there was any little bit of G-force at all, you start going... And it's like, I'm literally slithering out of here like an eel, you know, with a seatbelt. You just think, I'm going to be that kid that's just on the news.
There's always one kid.
Yeah.
That could have been Dermot Whelan. Yeah. We wouldn't be here tonight, Dermot. We wouldn't be here tonight if he had fell off that thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Slid out like an eel.
I mean, you've all seen the stuff, the clips on TikTok and YouTube where the rides go wrong, don't you? You know, you see these things going around. Next of all, you see people just flying out this way and flying out that way. That's why I don't get on them. Stick to the haunted swings.
Okay, I think they land in Candy Floss. It's all right.
They land on the bouncy castle.
I do remember that, getting my first thing at Candy Floss. Does anyone here ever actually remember those machines? You're thinking, those are the most unhygienic machines in the world. You know, the stick goes in and they run it around. I remember getting my first Candy Floss. My sister bought it for me, and I was like, this is the most glorious thing you could ever have as a child. The big and pink and
Hairy sugar.
yeah, hairy sugar, yeah. And I remember I walked straight out of the amusements that I got in. I walked straight outside into a cloud of blue bottle flies. And they just went straight into it. It was it. It was the greatest fly trap ever invented. And you have that moment of, well, do I eat around the flies? Or do I just imagine they're raisins? Or what do I do here?
You're trying to calculate the 5-second rule and all. You're going, how does this work here? Like, just on buttons. If anyone has, there's people here I see similar age. You don't be lying, you are. And I remember going to Butlins. Did anyone ever actually pay into Butlins? Because when my ma used to bring us to Butlins, there'd be a lot of Spanish students getting off the bus, and they'd be just walking through the gate. My ma just fucking shove us towards the Spanish students. And we were like big, white-skinned, bushy, Irish, ginger-haired freaks walking through with these gorgeous Latino-skinned kids. I'm going, Ma, I don't want to get fucking in now. Fucking in with all the Spanish kids, too for hiring them. Fuck's sake, Ma.
I didn't expect to be talking about amusement parks this long, but I was in Disney World. I was working over there, and I was staying in one of the hotels, and I had like half a day to kill before I went back to the airport. So I said, you know what, I'll go into the theme park and just have a look around. So I went in, and I thought, you know what, time is tight, and there was massive queues for everything. I didn't have one of those fancy fast passes. So I said, I'll just pick one thing, I'll queue for it, because I love roller coasters, and I'll do that, and then I'll get out of there. So I did that, and I queued up, and it was a mixture of, you know, adults and kids, and I thought, well, it can't be that scary if there's kids in there as well. So I queued up, and it must have been for a good 40 minutes. And as eventually the queue went into a little building, and we queued up a stairs, and then it was, oh, wow, we were going to come out onto a rooftop, and I was like, must be an amazing roller coaster. And then we're all getting hooshed along, and you know the security guards they're very strict because they got to get you in there. Please keep moving, sir, keep moving. And I noticed that as we were getting closer, the grown-ups were kind of stepping to the side. And it was eventually just me and a load of like 7 and 8 year olds. I was like, what's happening? And they keep moving, sir, keep moving, keep moving. And then eventually, all the kids, I looked up, and it was just like a ride that was on top of a roof, but it was little tiny airplanes. And I was like, no, oh no. And he's like, which child are you with, sir? And I was like, none. I'm just by myself. And they're like, you've got to get. And I was like, no, I need to get out. And they're like, you can't get out, sir. You can only get out the other. You have to go on the ride. So it was a load of 7 or 8 year olds sitting, and me sitting in this tiny airplane.
Like the
and you could see the other parents going, who is that freak? Why is he sitting beside my child in a tiny biplane? Anyway, so yeah, I didn't go back to Disney World after that. It was too traumatic. That's why I meditate. It was just to get over the PTSD of finding myself there. But look, Willa, you've had some journey, as Oprah types like to say. But when you and I met, it was 2004. Both you guys were on the Joy in the Hood, which was the Des Bishop TV show. Does anybody remember that? It was where he basically took a lot of people who'd never done comedy before. It was you guys. And
he went to disadvantaged areas around Ireland, and we were the first episode in Ballymun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how that all kicked off for us.
We were like your airplane story. We were the pilot.
Yeah. Pilot episode. Yeah,
we were the pilot episode.
Yeah, and we felt like we were with people we didn't want to be with.
Yeah.
But I remember standing with you because we started you went through that TV show, and then we started as open spot comedians in the International Comedy Club in Dublin at the same time. And I remember standing outside the pub with you, Willa, and you, Eric, but in a quiet moment, you started to tell me your backstory as to how you got to that place, and I couldn't believe it. So I would love you to take everybody through, because what you've accomplished in your life, who you've become, and the kind of person who you are, and the kind of warmth that you radiate now, for me is just always overwhelming. I love your company. When I think of what you've been through and the road that you've traveled, I just have so much admiration for you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dermot. There was no money's changed hands in that speech there from Dermot. Yeah, I have had a very, very colourful past, I suppose, so to speak. And I'm very comfortable talking about it. I don't mind speaking about it in rooms full of people because it's took me here. This is where my road has actually took me from coming from a really small family in Ballymun. Like I came from a really small family. Like I was the tallest. And no, there was myself, my mother, and my father, and we grew up in a flat in Ballymun. And my father had a decent job, my mother had a decent job, but my father liked to drink, and there was a lot of violence at home, and there was a lot of trouble at home. I think any child that's born into a family, the two things that's really needed to nurture any child is love and affection. And unfortunately, for me and my sister, we didn't get any of that. My dad came from what I call generational trauma. His father was a very disturbed man. My dad came from a family of 16 children. And my grandmother was pregnant for 16 years in a row. So from the eldest to the bottom, there was 16 years of a gap. And all the way in between that, there was a year in between each one. And they were poor. My father was to say that they were that poor that if you didn't wake up with an erection on Christmas morning, you had nothing to play with. And that was unless your brother had one, and he'd let you know.
And what about when the fella with the rent used to collect the rent? What about him when he used to knock on the door?
Yeah, so a fella used to knock on the door every week looking for the rent, and they used to bring him in, and everyone would look for it with him. So they had nothing. So I was always looking for an escape for what was going on at home, because my childhood was very fear-based, myself and my sister, and I started taking drugs at a very, very young age, probably about 8 or 9 years of age, started getting into solvents, and unfortunately through the years progressed. And I have to be honest, I love taking drugs. Drugs was a great escape away from what was going on at home, and it was a short-term, temporary solution to a long-term problem, and growing up through the years, my using progressed, and I left school at 15 years of age with no education, and mother and father broke up at 15. I went to live with my sister, who was...
When you were small and you were out there, I guess there might be, parents in the room here, maybe parents of small kids, and the idea that your 8 or 9-year-old might be out, doing solvents and taking harmful drugs. Was there any awareness in the family that, you were out up to that? Was there anyone looking for you or keeping an eye on you?
No, there wasn't, because unfortunately my mother and father were just caught up in their own stuff. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother later on in life had kind of joined them, and the both of them drank, and there was always food in the presses, and materialistically we kind of had everything, but we were just so dysfunctional. And I left to live in London when I was 16 years of age, ended up in a psychiatric hospital in London. Through my using and through my drug abuse, I ended up in 3 psychiatric hospitals. As I always say, it was a psychiatric. And through all my using, at the end of my using, I had been on methadone clinics, I had been homeless on the streets, I'd lived in hostels, and at the very end of my using, I was a crack and a heroin addict over in London, and I lived in a car with my now ex-partner, and eventually I got extradited home from London for a drugs charge. I was wanted at home, and I got a few years in prison, and I found a 12-step program in prison. I asked for help, which was the bravest thing that I could do, and anybody can do. For me, it's a really brave person that asks for help. It's not a weak person, and there's probably, chances are there's probably 1 or 2 people that's in this room that are struggling with whatever, it mightn't be addiction, it could be anything. But I mean, the steps to move forward and ask for help, there's always 10 solutions to one problem. I found that out now, I found out, along the way.
What was the time, the moment? Was it when you went to jail? What brought on that a realization that you needed to reach out, or that you wanted to improve your situation, or that you felt there's got to be more to life than this, or I mightn't be around to enjoy anything?
Yeah, well, I started going to NA meetings, which is Narcotics Anonymous, which is like Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was a 12-step program. And I started going to these meetings while I was in prison. And a mate of mine says, look, come on up to these meetings. They're great. He said, they bring in cigarettes. And that was what got me to the meeting. So I sat there. Some weeks I was there, and some weeks if I was sick, going through withdrawals from heroin, I wouldn't go. But I remember meeting a guy that I used to use with and who I was on a methadone clinic with in Ballymun. And I remember him walking in, and I hadn't seen him in years. And I had to kind of double take and look at him, and he was smiling, and he looked really well, and he smelled well, and he spoke about his life, that he'd given up drugs, and it was complete abstinence, something I couldn't really get my head around, and that he had a mortgage, and he drove a car, and he had 2 beautiful kids. And I was really, really attracted, to what this guy had. And I said to him, I said, how did you do that? And he told me how he done it. He said, I just started going to these meetings, and, I done X, Y, and Z, and
well, that shows that within you there was a real desire to change, to have a different life, and to get clean, and because I think for some people they mightn't even reach that point.
No, a lot of people don't reach that point. I just was really sick and tired of being sick and tired. I had been in prison loads of times. I'd been on methadone clinics, and my life was going completely nowhere. And I'd been out of the loop as well. I was doing a 3.5-year prison sentence, and I'd been on the run in London for about 2.5 years. So realistically, by the time I was getting out, it was 6 years that I had been on the streets of Dublin, which was really, really good as well, So I just thought to myself, I'll give this a go. And I asked for help. I asked a prison officer to help me get into a detox centre in the prison. And I went to this detox centre, and there was 10 of us that were in the detox program. And out of them 10 guys that were in that detox program, 7 of them are dead. One of them got clean about 3 years ago, a friend of mine, Stuart. And the other guy is still using, and he's still doing whatever he's doing. So I got out in 2001, and I embarked on this recovery journey, which, had its ups, had its downs.
And were you leaning on something bigger than yourself? Obviously, in the world of meditation and mindfulness, you can't help but find yourself sitting in places or getting a little bit still, and maybe in that space, not always, but sometimes in that space, you can become aware that there is something bigger than yourself. Were you religious? Were you spiritual? Did you think there's a deeper part of me, I know that I can lean on to get me through this?
Yeah, well, I mean, these 12-step programs are kind of based around a higher power. And I was told that my higher power doesn't have to be God, or it doesn't have to be Allah, or it doesn't have to be anyone in particular. A higher power basically was a power greater than myself. Now, I believed in God. I'm not religious. I'm not a practicing Catholic. I don't go to church. But I believe that in times, I tried to hang myself in a psychiatric hospital in London one afternoon. And I remember a patient come in and raised the alarm and got me cut down off the window. And I believed that God was looking after me at that time. And I'm not, as I said, I'm not a religious person. But the power greater than me, I said, was God. And the power greater than me as well were the people that went to the meetings and the people that helped me. So I had a spiritual awakening within about the first 3 months of going to these meetings. And I got a moment of clarity where I woke up one morning, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't think about using drugs. And that kind of clarified to me and gave me a little bit of understanding that I can live a life without the use of drugs. Total abstinence kind of got me a little bit. So I don't drink, I don't take drugs, I don't take any mood altering chemicals whatsoever. And my number one rule is that no matter what happens in my life, I don't pick up a drink and I don't pick up a drug, and I try to deal with whatever's been thrown at me. And I've had some shit thrown at me over the last while. I mean, my sister, who would have been my mother and my father, rolled into one. She was diagnosed with cervical cancer in 2009, and she passed away in 2010. And that that was a big, big turning part in my life for me. Someone who was always there for me, even though I done, you know, terrible things on her in the past. She passed away, and through that, good stuff has happened. I do, you know, and I'm not sitting here blowing smoke up my own arse, but I always kind of said, you know, when my sister passed away, that I do stuff for the hospice, and I was very lucky that I done a few charity events, and I raised them a few quid, and I go back now every couple of weeks, and I do a bit of voluntary work in the hospice down in St. Francis in Raheny, and just give a little bit back. My father, who I had a very, very difficult relationship with, when I come into recovery, I cultivated and I formed a relationship with this man who I have to say that I hated for most of my life and wished dead. The relationship was great. It wasn't that we sat down at a lake every Saturday when the sun went down and we fished and we, you know, patted each other on the back and we ate popcorn. It was nothing like that. But I got an understanding, I got acceptance, and I got forgiveness for him and for him from me as well. And
did he manage to quit alcohol? Did he manage to change his direction?
He kind of changed his behaviours. I got him going to AA for a while, and he said, I don't like AA. He says, every time I come out of AA, he said, I want to bleed and drink. He says, that's all they talk about, drink, drink, drink. So he went for a while, and it didn't work out for him. But when he ended up, he got diagnosed with cancer as well. So I remember one thing my father said to me when I was in recovery. He says, the worst feeling in the world that anyone will ever witness is loneliness. And I remember he lived on his own in Francis Street, and I used to go into him all the time, and he was diagnosed with cancer, and I used to take him to his appointments, and then eventually he ended up in the hospice up in Harold's Cross, and he said to me in the hospice, he says, I don't want to die on my own. And I says, you won't die on your own. I said, I promise you, I'll be with you. And he had great acceptance around passing. And the morning that he died, on the Friday morning of the 11th of March at 12:15, I was just so fortunate, and it was probably the most intimate moment that I ever had with my father in my life. And there was only me and him, and I'm really, really glad that there was. And I held him and I hugged him and I told him that I loved him. And he passed away at 12:15 that day. And I fucking miss him. I miss him terrible. You know, I really do. And then this year has probably been one of the biggest years in my life. You know, entertainment-wise, I sold out 2 nights in the Liberty Hall Theatre. I got a cancellation. Thank God to Vogue, Williams and Spencer. They cancelled the day in the Gaiety, and I got asked to do the Gaiety with 4 weeks' notice, and I sold that out 3 days before that.
I became the first comedian since Billy Connolly to headline the Gaiety in 2013. Willa.
Thanks, Eric.
And then he sold out the Olympia.
Yeah, but I need to get to the sad pass first. I know, yeah. So my mother passed away in May. I know, that kills the laughter, doesn't it? And I wasn't expecting it, and she was a fucking amazing woman. She taught me resilience, and she taught me love. She taught me respect, and she taught me how to treat other people. And she had COPD, and she passed away on May the 14th. And I was saying the other night, I said, I have her in the house, not her, like, but I have her ashes in the house. And I'm just not ready to let go of her yet. She wants to be put on the beach in Laytown, where I lived before, because she said some of her happiest memories was out there with my sister. And so it's been up and it's been down. And I think if I was told in the beginning, when I start, you know, going to meetings and come into recovery, that I would be witnessing, have a ringside seat at me mother dying and my father dying and my sister dying, maybe I'd have changed my mind, you know. But I'm so glad I didn't. I was there, I was present, I was able to be there for them, and I was able to give them the most valuable thing that you can give anybody when they're in the last few days, is your time, like, you know, because they don't need anything else. Material things don't mean nothing, you know. So I was able to be there for her, and I sold out the Olympia. a couple of weeks ago as well. And come here, look at things have been going really, really well for me. But I find for me is that life and recovery for me is an inside job. It's not about selling out the Olympia or all these gigs, even though that's great and financially it makes things a little bit easier. But I find that there's no point in being, Oxfam on the inside and Gucci on the outside. I want to try kind of be Penny's hun. All over, So I come here, I try my best, and I still go along with the thing that no matter what happens, I don't pick up, I don't take drugs. And April just gone, I was 23 years completely drug-free yet, so that's amazing.
Waiting to hear my backstory about getting detention in school that day.
I was going to say, you better have a really good one. It's like, oh God, I'm going to have to make something
I'll never get over that.
Isn't it amazing, Willa, how, and really beautiful, that the whole family learned and grew and changed. Maybe not completely. Your parents didn't transform themselves. But if you think back to how the situation was when you were that kid, that 8-year-old wandering the streets, and the relationship that you managed to develop with them later in life, that you all seem to have moved forward.
Yeah, we did. And I think that recovery, when I ended up in the psychiatric hospital in London that time, the first time when I got cut down off the window, my mum come over to me aid and to look after me. And she stayed in London after that. And she set up a life for herself and was there for 22 years. And when my sister passed away, she came back to Ireland. And, so I remember my mother saying one night, I was in the Axis, I was doing a gig, and she said, you getting clean and getting your life back together winning the lottery will never replace that feeling, she says, to see you well. I mean, dad as well. I changed, and yet, like what you says, other people change, but I find that I can't make anybody else change. Is that the only person that I have control over on a daily basis is myself. And there's been loads of stuff that happened. I was in a relationship for 22 years and that fell apart, and I'd 2 beautiful kids, I've 2 beautiful grandkids, I'd loads of stuff that kind of fell apart. I had a time in recovery in 2015 where I took my foot off the gas, and I neglected going to meetings, and I disconnected myself from people, and I'd split up out of a long-term relationship, and I went back living in the house that I had up in Laytown on my own. And I walked out of the bedroom one morning and I looked at the hatch in the attic, and my head just says to me, hang yourself out of the attic. Hang yourself. Nobody's going to miss you. You're a failure. And I start listening to my head. And I entertained this thought probably for about 3 or 4 weeks. And through circumstances of events, I ended up going to walk down in Cork. And when I went down to Cork, I recommitted myself to my recovery. And I started doing the things that I used to do when I first came into recovery, and them thoughts start moving from my head, and my life kind of took off again, So I haven't been exempt. I'm not the Dalai Lama, or I mess up, I fuck up on a daily basis. I say things sometimes that I shouldn't say, but I know the difference between right and wrong. And I know if I'm in the wrong, to go over and say to someone, listen, I'm really sorry, I was out of order. I'm sorry for what I've done, and and I've made amends to people for stuff I've done over the years. And what I'm saying is that I'm not perfect, and I'm not striving to be perfect. I am a work in progress. I'm under construction. I still go to a psychotherapist every few weeks. I still need to walk through, my childhood traumas as a kid. My kids are not starved of love and affection. If anything, they get millions of it. I love them unconditionally. My eldest one can be a pain in the arse. Any given day, but you know what? I love them, and I'm there for them. I'm present for them, and hopefully they never have to see me drunk or ever have to see me taking drugs, as long as I continue to do what I do.
What does your friendship mean, Eric?
Who's he again? Sorry, Well, I suppose we met, what was it, 2006, was it, when we did Join the Hood, which is 18 years ago now.
Yeah.
And we obviously come from very different backgrounds. We never met each other, we never knew each other before we did that show. And at the start of that show, I was working for IBM, I had a nice job. I was actually at a sales conference in Las Vegas. The group had all met up. They were all wondering, who's this fucking big prick from Vegas coming in to join the group next week, like, you know, and I arrived in, and Willa was there, larger than life, and we just hit it off from day one, really, didn't we? We started off the comedy club in Ballymunnon. Just to answer your question, I suppose, Dermot, what it means, it's amazing to have someone in your life who you can turn to and have totally relatable experiences. We've shared a lot of experiences together. We know what each other's going through. We both have kids. We both have grandkids. And I know, and I have been going through, you know, stuff over the years with my mental health. And Willie's always there. I know he's always there on the end of the phone. And even when I'm not ringing him, he will ring me, you know. And sometimes I'll answer, sometimes I won't, like, you know. And he really knows that and he respects that, like, you know. But it's very comforting to have that in your life. And I'm very lucky to be able to call Willie my friend, you know.
I think we're going to have to take a little break. But I just want to thank you for sharing all that, Willie. It really is a powerful story. And I know that personally, I've heard you talk about that before, but everyone in the room here knows how much your family mean to you, you know, how much your friends mean to you, and just the impact of that story was incredible, wasn't it? Yeah, so thanks, everybody. We're going to take a little break. You can head off, go to the loo, grab yourself a drink, and I'll see you in a few minutes for the second half. Thanks, everybody. How are you all doing? Did you get a sandwich? Yes. No other show is going to give you free lunch, free dinner. There were those kind of funeral sandwiches. You know those ones where like one piece of the bread is stale on one side, you know that? And you're like, coleslaw? Why do they always pick the one thing that will go off the quickest to leave out for 9 hours? So, are you having a good time? Yeah. Well, let me welcome back my wonderful guests, Eric Lalor and Willa White. Now, you've had the whole break there, Eric, to come up with a really harsh childhood.
We just told Eric to make up the saddest story he's ever told of.
And not one of the plot lines from Fair City.
No, oh God, no. Oh, yeah. I was recently back in that show and it all stoked up again, Dermot. Getting attacked by grannies in supermarkets, yeah.
Well, Fair City's a huge show. Did you know Eric is in Fair City? Well, are you technically still in it, or are you...
Well, I hadn't been in it for about 4 or 5 years, and then the agent said, they want you back for a few episodes, and I was like, all right, cool, but you're in jail. And I was like, okay, right, finally I know where he is. I did 4 episodes, and on the last day I got an email from the head of Fair City, Bridget DeCourcy. She said, Eric, it was great to see you on set. At least now we know where your character is. And I said, well, I hope it wasn't a bleeding life sentence. And she didn't even reply. So I'm still in the, I don't know what's going on.
Well, you're still alive.
I'm still alive, that's the main thing, yeah. And with soap, anything can happen. They can write anything.
I know. What I mean? Because if you get killed off, your only option then is coming back as a ghost.
Yeah. Or coming out of the shower. Yeah. Remember Dallas all them years ago, yeah?
Or ended up getting released and going into Ross and Rowan.
Yeah.
But people come up to you all the time still, and you've had some crazy fans approach you over the years.
Unbelievable, Dermot. Like, it's... At the start, it was very disconcerting because, you know, I remember going through Dunn Stores in Charlestown Shopping Centre with my wife and I was pushing the trolley. And next of all, I felt myself getting hit on the back. And I thought it was my missus, you know, and I was what's that? Oh! And some little old woman hit me with her handbag. You fucking leave Cardinal alone. And I was like, is this my life now? You know what I mean? And but then my wife said something nice. She said, well, you must be convincing them because you're doing a good job, like, you know. And I went, that's why I married you, sweetheart. Telling me the good stuff, you know.
It is. He's that good an actor. Yeah. Everyone thinks it's real life. Yeah. Speaking of real life, what was your home life like?
Well, I grew up in Finglas. My parents from very opposite ends of the social spectrum in Dublin. Like, my mum was working class from a place called Donecarney, and my dad was from the other side. He was from Dorky. Oh, yes. That's why, yeah, look at that deep hush in the room going, oh my God, that guy's got royal blood. But you see, the thing is, my dad was deaf, so he didn't even know he was posh, okay? And that's not even a joke, like, you know. And he, like, when I was listening to Willie's amazing story there, he was talking about, you know, the trauma of his childhood. I was very lucky in that I didn't, because I was able to deal with any particular traumas there and then. You know, when you're a kid and your ma and dad are giving out to you and you just wanted to say, fuck off, you know? Yeah, that's what you want to do. But you couldn't do that in the 70s and 80s or you'd end up in hospital. You know what I mean? But like nowadays, you tell your parents to feck off and you buy a new quad bike. Do you know what I mean? But my dad was deaf and he wanted us to have a normal childhood. He didn't want us to learn sign language, okay? He wanted to read our lips. So I am always very expressive when I am talking to him like this, so he can understand what I am talking about. No, Dad, I promise you, I was not sniffing gas. You know, this kind of thing, like, you know.
That was Will.
Did he not let you learn sign language simply for himself, in that he just really wanted to learn to lip read, or did he want to? What was the reasons behind that?
He just felt that it would be a lot more. He was thinking of the kids, I suppose. He said, look, it's a lot more normal for you guys. My mum learned sign language, you know, from Donecarney marrying a fella from Dalkey. She said, like, where's the fucking money? You know?
And the will.
Yeah. But my ma did learn, and like that, you know, when parents are having conversation at the table, they don't want you to know, they just start going, even all that. And we'd be like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, you know. But he wanted us to have a normal childhood. He didn't want us to learn sign language. So he said, I will read your lips. So a lot of people say, when I'm on stage, I'm very expressive. I have a bit of a rubbery face. But that's from growing up with a deaf dad and communicating with him. So I dealt with the traumas there and then. So I'd be able to tell my dad to fuck off, as long as I didn't move my lips. Like, that's the truth, right? I mean, Dad would give me some stick and I'd be standing there looking and going, oh God, you prick. You posh ducky cunt, fuck off. But yeah, I was sus. You'd be like that looking here. I know there's something fucking going on here, but
6 months later, you've a ventriloquist dummy on your lap. Yeah. Both of you telling your dad to F off.
But he's, but like my dad, like I'm very, very close to my dad. He's still around, and it's great, and we have a great relationship. But I always felt so protective of him as well as a child, you know, because, you know, with deafness, it's not immediately obvious to somebody that you're deaf unless you speak to them. And, you know, I tell a little story on stage sometimes about, you know, he'd bring me to football matches every weekend. We'd walk down to the bus stop in Finglas, and there'd always be a few boys, you know, from Finglas at the bus stop. And my dad would just staring out at the traffic. And one of the boys would walk up to my dad and go, hey, do you know what time the next bus is at? And my dad would continue to look out at the traffic. And your man would walk back to the rest of the right angles, you know. And he'd say to them, he's a fucking ignorant prick. And I'd be cringing, going, fuck's sake. I remember going down one morning and I seen a few boys at the bus stop. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, here we go again. My dad was staring out at the traffic. And one of the right angles barely moved. And I just jumped up and went, he's deaf, all right, get over it. He doesn't know what time the next bus is at, and he can't hear you, all right, deal with it. And the right angle looked at me. And he looked at me dad. And my dad looked at me. And he looked at the right angle. And the two of them just went like that. Oh, he's an amazing man. I love him very dearly. He's the funniest man I know. Yeah, so I suppose that's why, I'm you know, there, but with the grace of God, we go down Willie's path, you know what I mean? I was lucky, I suppose, I had the things that Willie lacked in terms of, you know, love and affection. Come here, my dad especially was a gargler. And back in the 70s and 80s, you remember you could have 10 points and drive down the road. Do you remember them days? My dad used to bring us out to the Dalkey Island Hotel, have about 6 or 7 pints. We'd be there with a bag of crisps and a can of Coke, and then we'd drive straight home. Not a bother.
I read an article recently, it was one of the, maybe some of you have seen it. It was an article about the time in the 70s when they reduced the limit to 12 pints. So you could only have the 12.
Yeah.
It would be a quiet night.
Yeah.
There were protests outside the Dáil.
Riots. Yeah.
They went marching, and there was interviews with him. It was like, 12 points, absolutely ridiculous. They're going to stop us smoking next. Like,
you only vote next.
Unbelievable, 12 points. It'd be 12 points. You couldn't find your car. You didn't even know what it was. COVID was a particularly difficult time, Eric, for a lot of people. I'm sure there's people in the room here and listening who found that period of time particularly difficult. A lot of it had to depend on the kind of work you did as well. That amplified it for certain people, or if you were experiencing certain things at home, those were amplified. But I know that you struggled a bit during that time, didn't you?
Yeah, usually so. Like a lot of people, I suppose, because we are in the entertainment business, we relied on live shows, obviously like this show here tonight. And when I remember at the start of the pandemic and the lockdown came in, it was all a bit of a novelty, wasn't it? It was like, whoa. A few days off work, is like, whoa, fucking nice one. Like, it was like the adult equivalent of being sent home from school because the pipes were frozen, wasn't it? And we were all so giddy and excited. But then, like, you seen all the stories, Bergamo, Italy, and then reading little pieces in the paper about, this could go on for the next 3-4 years, and you were like, whoa, hang on now, what's going on here? And as much as we were very lucky at the start of the COVID period, do you remember the weather was amazing? I don't know what that was. I think because everybody was indoors, not polluting the skies or whatever. The weather was incredible, so we had that. But I very quickly got down on myself. Wow, that sounds rude. I got down.
Look, it was COVID. We all did things we're not proud of, Eric.
Some people were baking banana bread, and
He was turning himself into a banana.
So I started an OnlyFans channel, and my mum as well. My mum was very sick at the time. Actually, the way the over 70s were supposed to cocoon for ages, and we'd go down to her house in Finglas, and we'd be sitting in the garden, and she'd be looking out the window to us. And there were mad times, like mad, but my ma, the first day the cocoon people were allowed out, she went it was her birthday, and she went out for a walk, and she tripped and broke her wrist, went to hospital, had an operation on the wrist, and then 2 weeks later, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was a really tough time for us all, and that, and the fact that I thought I would never get to work again in the job that I love, which is, doing stand-up comedy. It all just came on top there. Before even COVID, I had, I suppose, brushed with anxiety and the horrific feeling. I remember you telling me that story when you first had it in Kilkenny that time at the Cat Laughs. Remember?
That's what started me on this whole adventure, was a panic attack that I had driving to a comedy festival. And I remember I had to pull the car over, and I was lying on the side of the road thinking I was dying, and I was thinking, please God, not here in Mullinavat. My legacy does not end here, outside a Pebble Dash bungalow.
But I hope you were able to claim the Mullinavat back.
23%.
That's how I get the gigs, Dermot. That's how I get the gigs. But come here. There was, I suppose, there was a sense of hopelessness, a sense of, is this ever going to end? Am I ever going to get out of the house again? My wife was a carer, a home carer, so she'd go around to all the elderly people's houses and look after them. So she was out earning, and I wasn't. I was stuck at home on the €300 a week thing, or whatever that was, for about 6 weeks, all right? And but then I just hit rock. And I remember there was moments in it there. I remember I was doing an interview on the 6 o'clock show with Mirren, and it was obviously via, not satellite, what was it, via Zoom. So, and I was talking, and when she was asking me how you feel, and I remember I was on live television and I was shaking, and I was trying to remember what I wanted to say, and I just went off on one. And my mates texted me going, "Holy fuck, Eric, is everything all right?" And Mirren, as soon as the show was over, rang me straight away going, "Eric, is everything all right?" And it was then I kind of realised, Jesus Christ, there's something really wrong here, like, you know. And I'm lucky that I know yourself, Dermot. I have a good family around me. There was just a sense of hopelessness, a darkness, and just I had no sense of purpose, basically. You know that I suppose it's such a cliche, that whole alpha male wanting to earn money for your family and bring the money in, and I wasn't doing that. I didn't feel like I was contributing. I didn't know what else to do, and there was no light at the end of the tunnel at that time. I got really, really bad. And I remember we did a thing with James Cotter, the socially, what was it?
It was a kind of TV show that we shot on our phones, individually.
Yeah.
Because that was the only way you could make
it's
telly.
the only way. We couldn't be all in a group setting. And I remember when we went to the screening of that, the first night, we met in a pub in Ringsend. And you were there, and like the rest of the cast and the crew were there. And I remember feeling like I was having an out-of-body experience. I couldn't enjoy it. And James, as you know, is full of chat, and he's yapping away to me. I just couldn't communicate. I was just one-word answers. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't feel comfortable here. I don't feel right here. And I did the classic Irish exit. I just kind of went to the toilet, left the front door, jumped into a taxi, and went home. You know, I couldn't bear being there. So I was lucky enough that, I suppose, with knowing yourself, and when I had the first anxiety before COVID, I realised that meditation was a nice tool for me to get into. I'll be honest with you, Dermot, at the start, when I first heard about meditation, I was going, that's fucking hocus pocus. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of people, I suppose. But then
Me too. That's what I thought of it.
Yeah.
You know.
But then I started listening to, and it was your podcast, your voice, which really fucking helped. Like, now, the thing with meditation is that you have to stick with it. You do have to stick with it. Like, you can't just go, well, I'll do 2 sessions, that's me, grand, feeling great, go out and smell a few flowers now. Do you know what I mean? You really have to stick with it. And I found that when I stuck to it, but also it was also something to do. Do you know what I mean? In the day, you're bored, you've nothing to do because you're stuck at home. And I was doing your meditations in the morning, and I was doing one in the evening, and I noticed a little change starting to come in and starting to look a little bit optimistic. And then I kind of reached out. My next door neighbour, he was delivering Davo. He was delivering Thai food around the areas of North Dublin. And he said, "Do you want me to get you, see if you want a driver?" And I was going, yeah. And as soon as I got that job, I was like, it's like I'd won the lottery. It was like, oh my God, I feel like such a simple thing of going out the door, driving the car, delivering food and getting a little wage at the end of it, bringing it home and giving it to your family. It just made such a difference. But it wasn't just that. Like, there was a lot of other stuff. I went to speak to my GP, and like, to cut a very long story short, you know, a good friend of ours is PJ Gallagher, who's gone through an awful thing, and now he's like on top of the world. And I spoke to him about medication. I said, you know, because PJ has taken medication. PJ's always said, well, if you have a headache, you'll take a tablet. If you've a broken mind or whatever it is that you're going through, surely you should take something. So I went down and spoke to my doctor, and I got on antidepressants, and I'm absolutely fine with that, you know. And I think it was because people like PJ, people like other people that I admire, broke the stigma of taking antidepressants, taking medication to help you along. And as soon as I saw all them people doing it, I was going, well, then I should fucking do that as well, like, you know. And PJ's like, look, I'm going to be on these for the rest of my life, and I'm very happy about that, you know. So I said, well, you know,
particularly if they work.
Exactly,
you know, and medication doesn't suit everybody. It has to be said, and there's a lot of people who try it and they go from drug to drug and they just don't seem to find one that works for them. So I think it's important to point that out. But definitely, I think if it's something that works for you, and it's really important that you talk about it as well, because you know yourself. You know, people can have thoughts of, oh God, am I one of these people now? Am I one of these people who takes medication for my mind?
Yeah.
Does that mean, you know? And if that is the thing that works for you, then that's what you should be doing.
100%, yeah. And like, I think, like PJ said, I mean, you know, eventually they say you should try and maybe wean yourself off. But at the moment, I'm happy out. You know what I mean? One thing I always felt, and probably people, self-employed people in the room would know, that come every October when you have to return your tax is a very stressful time. And I used to get really fucking anxiety-ridden when that time came around. And I noticed this year that when the tax was coming up, I didn't give a fuck.
Because he wasn't paying it.
Because I got everything in cash.
Brilliant. The two, obviously, you've got the You Must Be Jokin podcast. If you haven't listened to the You Must Be Jokin podcast, award-winning, congratulations on your latest award.
Thank you.
It's absolutely brilliant. And if you listen to the podcast, I guess you'll get what you're getting now. You'll get the two guys, you get their friendship, you get the comedy, but you get the real stories as well. And you just have a beautiful way with people and communicating. But sometimes I wonder what you two get up to on the road, because I know the funny things just happen to ye because I've spent enough time with ye. But is there anything that happens to the two of you when you're together?
Yeah, there's loads of stuff that happens. It's really, really, do you know what? It's like when you're walking with your best friend and you're doing something that you love, I mean, it's never really work. Like we just, anytime we meet, even when we're on the phone, I mean, if someone could record us, maybe I'd be back in another psychiatric hospital.
We'd definitely be cancelled.
If the truth be known. And we just have a laugh. We're just like two teenagers.
Yeah, two giddy kids.
One thing I can remember, and it was, maybe you can tell the story, Eric. Do you remember the gig that we done for the diving?
Oh,
what was it, the underwater?
We did a gig for the Irish Scuba Divers Association, and it was in Athlone, right? Which is so bizarre because it's right in the middle of the country, no sea at all, like, you know, fucking landlocked.
You were doing it in puddles and all.
I suppose it was a central place for all the divers to come to. I suppose that was the reasoning.
You know why? You know when scuba divers are scuba diving, you know why they fall backwards out of the boat, don't you? Do you know why? Because if they go forward, they're still in the boat.
There you go. Facts of life there from Willa.
Educational as well. So tell them what happened.
So these are known as like, I suppose these are like corporate gigs, you know, and they booked myself and Willie. And years ago, I used to have this routine about my daughter being born in a house in Ballymun, and it was basically a home birth routine. And there's a big setup for it at the end where we go into the bedroom with the wife and the midwife and my ma and her ma and her sister. And the cue line is, I say the words, a dark, dark atmosphere came over that room. And whoever's on sound cues up Tubular Bells. You know Tubular Bells from Mike Oldfield?
So what happened was, I'll take over from here.
Yeah.
So what happened was Eric put me in charge of the music. So he gave me the CD. So I took the CD and I was in charge of the sound desk where you played the CD at the time, you know. Spotify hadn't been invented back then. And I put the CD down, and when I came back to the CD, there was about 4 blank CDs there. And I looked at the 4 CDs and I went, I genuinely didn't know which one it was, because it wasn't written on it, Tubular Bells, it was just a blank CD. And Eric is talking, he's doing the material, and I'm going, Jesus, this is coming up soon. Just pick a CD. So I picked up one of the CDs and I put it in onto track 1, which was the track it was on. And then Eric comes up to the part where it goes,
a dark, dark atmosphere came over that room. And next of all, the Scissor Sisters, I Don't Feel Like Dancing Tonight, came on. And I'm standing there going, I'm looking over at Willa, and Willa's going. And the crowd, the audience were going, what the fuck is this? And all I could think of at that moment was, well, in fairness, she didn't feel like dancing.
She couldn't fucking dance.
But I genuinely thought Willa had sabotaged me for the crack. And he couldn't stop laughing because I was getting so angry, going, you fucking and set me up. I promise you I didn't. In a bundle he was.
Yeah, I do remember I was in a band, a really terrible band, and we were doing a gig on a ferry. That'll show you how popular we were. And my friend was dying to get into the band, and he just was like, please, can I be in the band? And we're like, no, we've got guitar, bass, drum, singer. Don't need it. And he's like, please. And then we wanted to play a song by The Jam, In the City, I think it was. And it's a bit where it goes, on the keyboard. So we thought, okay, you can play in the band for one song, okay? That song. So it's like, okay, so we set up. It was one of those keyboards where it had a million different sound effects on it, all different sounds. So we're playing this thing, and we're all kind of nervous because, it's a ferry. We want it to go well. We didn't want to be made walk the plank. And of course, it's coming up to the bit of the song, and we hadn't played that song before, and it was all going really well. And it gets to that bit, and instead of the he had accidentally somehow set it to Jumbo Jet. So it goes, and it goes. Like, wow, this is some Radiohead interpretation of The Jam. We want to spin our wheel. Would anyone like to come up and spin the wheel? There's various selections of different questions on here. Yes, come on, I'll give her a round.
Give that lady a round of applause.
Hello, what's your name?
Mariana.
What is it? Mariana, come on up. It's lovely to meet you. How are you doing? It's gone deathly quiet in here.
You don't own a trench by any chance, do you?
No, it's not that Mariana Trench. Wonderful. Do you want to spin the wheel? There's no prize, by the way. It's just, it's in there. Biggest regret. Oh, thanks, Mariana. Way to run. Thank you so much. Give her a round of applause.
Hello, Mariana.
My biggest regret is that I didn't meet you 20 years before I met you. And you, Dermot.
I was going to say get a room, but actually there's loads of them available.
Yeah. I was saying we both would have been on the gear. Yeah.
No, I suppose my
You know it.
I wouldn't have shared it with you. My biggest regret, I suppose, was taking drugs. Definitely. Not taking enough of them. No.
And you hate all the people that take the drugs.
That would definitely be it.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. No, I took the drugs. My biggest regret, if I be 100% honest, is that I didn't get educated. I'd have loved to get an education. So
have you ever thought of going back?
No, they wouldn't let me. No, I've never thought about going back. I've navigated and got my way through life this far. I'm 53 and I'm all right. I'm doing okay. But I would really have liked to went back and got third level education and probably went to college or done something like that. But if I'd have done all that, I probably wouldn't be here. So
that was my biggest regret is that I never went to third level education, and it was just, I suppose, the circumstance that I was in a home with English. It was very, all right, you're doing your leaving cert, and as soon as that's done, you're going, I have to get a fucking job, and that's what I have to do, because my man had all the trauma. My dad was just staring at walls.
I told my dad I wanted to go to college. He just didn't hear me. I ended up at IBM. Does anybody else want to spin the wheel? Come on.
Go on, somebody.
Come on, people. Yes, there you go.
Give that lady a round of applause. All right.
Hello, what's your name?
Becky.
How are you from, Becky?
Clonmel.
Great. And what's the best thing about there?
There's nothing in it.
There's nothing in it. There must be something in it.
There's no pubs or nothing, so it's nothing. One shop.
You have a market?
Yeah, we have a market every Sunday, every second Sunday.
Is it? What kind of a market is it?
A farmer's market.
Is that where they sell farmers? It's just like, please, will you take me son? He's absolutely useless. Go on, take him.
A bit like that, yeah.
Is it like farmer's market?
Yeah.
It's like homemade candles and olives.
Some baked goods.
Yeah, that sounds good. What's the name of the place?
Clonmel.
Clonmel. Okay, amazing. Do they have a GAA team?
Yeah, they do.
Okay. St. Paul's. Come on, St. Paul's. Up.
Come on, St. Paul.
St. Paul's for the cup. Give it a
On the
spin
farmer's
there.
market.
What do you do for a living?
I'm actually
Spins
going
wheels.
back to college to do a master's, so.
Good for you. What's the master's in?
Teaching.
Teaching. What kind of teaching?
Secondary school.
Good for you. We need teachers. Yes, I was going to make a joke there, but no. Teachers, great. No. 3 months holidays, etc., etc. Okay, so we've got a time when you really needed that laugh. Okay, thank you very much. Lovely to meet you. I didn't realize we'd written so many poignant and sad things on the wheel.
Yeah. I can see there's a pattern developing here, all right. I suppose, like, what I love about Willie is he always has a saying for everything. And, you know, like, you'd be telling him something and he'd go to you, well, Eric, you didn't drown on the beach. Well, you didn't drown in the sea.
You didn't get saved from drowning in the sea to be kicked to death on the beach.
You know, and that's me just forgetting to do me lotto. You know what I mean?
Where do you get all them? Because you do. You've got just this
He's
never-ending.
amazing.
I think there's always someone in our lives who just has an endless list. It might be an uncle or a granddad, or there's always some saying. And half the time you're convinced, I think they just made that up. I don't think that's a saying. It's like,
because Willie says it with such conviction, you're kind of going, wow, that's fucking, what does that actually mean, though?
car broke down on the M50. Well, it's better to have 6 skinheads in a minibus than be licked in the forehead by a badger. Like, so true. And I feel so much happier after that.
It's amazing. He just pulls him out of his arse. It's unbelievable. Like, you know, you've had a bad day. Well, you know what they say about the frisbees? What? A frisbee across the meadow is worth 2 in the sea. What the fuck is that?
Suddenly everything's better.
Yeah, it's like, Jesus, he's a human form of Xanax.
Let me have a look at some of the things that you put in our bowl of destiny. How do you stop this is Dermot, how do you stop a friend from reminding you daily they are from Limerick? Green and white, kid. Well, do you know what? We will say it all the time. You know, people go, I'm sick of Limerick people talking about the bloody All-Irelands. And you're like, lads, you've called the Stab City for 50 years. We've got kicked around. We're like the mongrel mutt who was the butt of every joke. And then something happens and we win a few All-Irelands. You're like, would you ever shut up about the All-Irelands? No, we'll never shut up about it. So, yeah, in your face. Dermot, if you were hosting a dinner party, what 4 celebrities, living or dead, would you invite?
Interesting.
Well, let's put it to the boys, while I desperately think of somebody.
Nice one, Dermot.
You.
No, our present company excluded.
Yeah, even one person that you would have liked to have met or you'd like to hang out with.
I know he gets a lot of stick, and I met him once, and he was the soundtrack to my childhood. And I know a lot of people diss him, and it's uncool to like him, but I love Bono, and I'd love to have a dinner with Bono.
So would I.
Yeah.
And who's the other 3, Eric?
Living
or dead?
Living or dead. Just for the sheer charisma and megastar that he was, Frank Sinatra.
Brilliant.
Would be one. And then for the sheer madness but amazing ability in the football world, Diego Maradona. And
that'd be a good party, all right.
It would be, yeah.
Although I think you wouldn't get to chat to him because he'd be nipping out to the Jacks every 5 minutes.
Some laughing your ass and the pasta vegetables.
Great dinner, my friend. Yeah, Eric, thank you for inviting me here. No, I'm not too hungry. You know any nightclubs?
Oh yeah, Maradona, what a player. And then one more. Let's go. I'd have to invite a lady, and I suppose the biggest star in the world, one of the best singers in the world right now, and I know my kids listen to her, and my nieces listen to her, and Dua Lipa. I think she's incredibly talented and gorgeous. So just to have her at the end of the table there with Maradona and Bono. And Frank Sinatra. Dua, Bono, Dua. Of course, Bono's from Dalkey, where my dad's from. Yeah, and then or as we like to call them, Bonya.
So what did you say? Who'd my four be?
Yeah, or anybody that.
I'd invite Shaka Khan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I'd say Shaka Khan, everybody. Shaka Khan.
What was that?
And everyone would be saying, I feel for you. No, so it would be Shaka Khan. It would be Robin Williams. It would be Elvis Presley. And the lady would have to be Edith Piaf, the French singer. I just think she's an amazing person.
She'd never have seconds though, would she?
No, and
She keeps saying no.
No,
I go on,
bread
you will.
roll.
No. When you're young. Will you have a biscuit? No.
Will you have a baguette? No baguettes. Yeah, that would be me, yeah.
Someone says, and this is a question.
And what about you, Dermot?
What?
What about you?
Yeah.
Gosh. I would like to have dinner with Keanu Reeves. I know I should be saying like the Dalai Lama or something, but I got to interview him one time on the radio very briefly. And they're always, over the years, it's a weird job working on the radio because you get to interview a lot of the people that you would be looking at, in a movie that week or whatever. So it's
Superstars, yeah?
yeah, real A-listers. But it's such a weird environment that I think it kind of put me off meeting celebrities because you have this kind of, what happens is you go, oh great, you're interviewing whatever, Brad Pitt or, Keanu Reeves. And they say, okay, you've got 4 minutes. And it's almost like speed dating. And you have to talk about their movie. And generally, they're only talking to you because they're desperate to talk to loads of media because the movie's crap. So you have to pretend that you really like the film. And it just used to find that those conversations you'd be like, so I really love the movie. Tell us a little about it. Well, my character is an ex-Marine, and that's it, guys. That's all we have time for. So it kind of killed my desire to meet celebrities.
So he's one.
So you'd eat on your own, is what you're saying. But Keanu Reeves, you'd like to have a more in-depth, more longer than a 4-minute conversation.
Yeah, he just seemed like a really cool, interesting guy. And I love John Wick movies. And I'd love to just be able to ask him all the dumb questions, and tie him to the chair. So you're like, did you really hit him in the face when you did that? And, do you know Kung Fu for real? And I like all those ridiculous questions.
It's developing into a different type of party now, Dermot, isn't it? Tying him to the chair.
I guess I really would love to meet Bono. I would love to have him because same as that, I think he's got remarkably bad press over the years. And I've never actually got to sit down and interview him even over all the years, weirdly, because you think you would, because he's Irish. And
I was very fortunate. I was sent over to Seattle with Joe Dodgy for the start of the Joshua Tree anniversary tour with a load of fucking Irish journalists. I was like in my element going, oh my God. And we went in under the stadium and I didn't know what was going on. All the journalists put their phones on the table. In walks The Edge, in walks Adam, and I'm going, what's the fuck is that? You having dinner with us? And they're like, no, we're having an interview. Sat there for 10 minutes, I was buzzing, and then Bono and Adam walk in, and I'm like, oh my Jesus Christ almighty. And I got up from the table about a couple of minutes before the interview ended, and the Sony music executive said, you're going over there to get a selfie, aren't you? And I said, yeah, is that all right? She goes, I'd rather you didn't, because all the executives are here. And I was like, oh, all right, forget about it. And as soon as the interview was over, every single journalist grabbed their phone and went, yeah, Bono, selfie, right, selfie. And I was like, I looked at your woman going, here, hang on a second, I'm going over here as well. And I went up to him and said, Bono, how are you doing? I says, I'm a fellow Northsider like yourself, massive fan. My name's Eric. And he goes, Eric, I know who you are. And he gave me a big hug, right? And he gave me a selfie with his head on my shoulder like this. And everyone in the press junket was slagging me off, calling me Bono's pet. Because in all their selfies was like that, looking at them like, quite distant from them, But it turns out, I'm going on Facebook that day going, he said he knew me, and I put the picture up of the two of us, and I said he obviously is a big Fair City fan, you know. He got a lot of likes, it did. But yeah, no, I'd love to. I had, I suppose, a brief moment, but it was a group interview, if you know what I mean. I didn't have a one-on-one chat with him, like, you know, but I found him fascinating.
Yeah, I went to see his one-man show in New York, and it was incredible. Like, in reality, like the image that's been posted out there, and I always think as Irish people, you know, we can give our own a hard time, and we're not great at celebrating success some of the time. But when you see his career and how self-deprecating he is, he knows he talks like an idiot sometimes, and he knows that, you know, he can rub people up the wrong way. But even through all that, he just persevered, and he stayed in Ireland. I really do admire that. One person I would love to have for dinner would be Deepak Chopra. So he's quite a world-renowned spiritual leader, I suppose. And he was one of the main guys who made meditation accessible to a lot of people. Now, he's pals with pop stars and, you know, celebs and all that, and some people don't like that particular thing. But when I was struggling with anxiety and crap sleep and having those panic attacks and doubting myself and drinking too much, I got a little book that was called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. It was by Deepak Chopra. And it's only a small little book. And you know, sometimes it's a little thing or a person that comes into your life just at the right time. And I read that book and it just clicked, you know. And my meditation teacher, David G., who came from the Chopra Institute, he says that, you know, for changes to happen in your life, you need 3 things to happen. You need the message, the messenger, and timing. And all those things need to click. And I think there's lots of times in our life when we understand the message. You know, someone's saying, hey, just try this, it works. Or maybe you should think about doing this in your life, or looking at this area of your life. And you're like, yeah, you're so right. And maybe you're ready for that to happen. But the person who's saying it, you just can't relate to them, or you're just not getting the message. Or maybe it's the right person and the timing's right, but the way they're delivering the message, it doesn't quite click. Or maybe they're perfect, what they're saying is right, but you're just like, oh, do you know what, now I've just too much on and I'm caring for a parent and I'll circle back to it later. And I guess for me at that time, that little book, the 3 things clicked, you know. And I think one of the greatest gifts that my book gave me is that when people tell me, do you know what, it just clicked. And they say, well, something about the way you said it, at that time, it just clicked, and I started to meditate. And there was a lovely guy who I put in the book, actually, and he contacted me, and I had been talking about this 16-second meditation. And he contacted me because he wanted me to know that he was singing in the shower. And I was like, okay, this is intimate. But he says, no, you don't understand. Like, and it's a bit like what you were saying, Eric, when you started meditating and you just started to notice subtle differences. Yeah. And what had happened, this chap, again, in COVID, he lost his job. He had 3 small kids at home. And he just realized that he wasn't himself. And what shook him the most was that one morning he was in his shower and he realized that he wasn't singing. And for him, that was his thing. He got up in the morning and he had a shower and he sang his favorite songs in the shower. And that was a kind of a subconscious signal to him that everything was okay. That was his personality, and he'd come out and he was ready for the day. And then one day, with everything that was going on and all the pressures, he realized, I've stopped singing in the shower. I'm not myself. And that may sound like a really small thing, but for him, it was huge. And he had contacted me then to say that he had started doing this 16-second meditation, just this small thing. And same thing, he'd been very cynical about it and suspicious, and that's just for kooks and Russell Brand and all these guys. But he just said, look, I'll just try it. And within 2 weeks, he realized he was singing in the shower again. And he wanted to tell me because he felt like he was getting his sense of self back. You know, and I think we all have these little markers, these little things about us. You know, maybe it's messing with the kids and acting the idiot, or maybe it's whistling, you know, when you're loading the dishwasher, or, you know, or maybe it's you hug people when you meet them, or just like you were saying when you were in that bar, you know, you knew nothing on the outside was particularly different, but you knew it felt different. Those little markers of who you were and cracking jokes and feeling that connection, they weren't there. And that can rock you, even when they're just small things like singing in the shower. So when he said that, it just was a sign of the message, the messenger, and the timing happened for him. And that gave him enough of a trajectory to keep going. And sure enough, he ended up in a better place.
That must be an amazing feeling for you then, Dermot, to hear that.
Yeah, and of course, I'm not saying that, you know, to say I'm great, but I love to see evidence of that because I lived it, you know, and there were times when my wife was into meditation and yoga and all these wonderful things and was reading those kinds of books, and they were all over the house, but I wasn't ready. You know, the message, the messenger, and the timing just didn't align, you know, so I was leaning into things like alcohol and cigarettes and anything else that I felt could kind of give me a sense of myself. But I was, you know, obviously running from that sense of self. But it was that little book by Deepak Chopra that I got. I can't even remember how it ended up in my possession, but something clicked. And then the plane can lift off. Now, I drifted away from it, and then I came back. I'll tell you a quick story. You know, I was meditating for years, and from kind of 2010 up till about on and off then. I did it solidly, and then I kind of drifted away, but I was still talking about it, you know, and say, oh, meditation's great and all that. But actually, I wasn't really doing the thing. It's like if you're saying, yeah, I'm in the gym every day, you know, but you're not actually, you know. And then we started the Dermot and Dave show on Today FM in that the mid-morning slot, there was a lot of pressure on us, and there was people in the building who felt like we shouldn't be there and we shouldn't have been given the gig, and we had planned to do the first ever Dermot and Dave live tour, which we weren't expecting to be doing on top of this new radio show. So I started to get the wheels started to come off, and I remember sitting in my car in Merrion Square, and I was thinking, I don't feel right. Again, like you were saying, just something is not right. And I had been talking about meditation and extolling the virtues of it, but I hadn't been doing it. So the stress just accumulated. And I went into my GP, and she was around the corner from where I'd parked. And I sat down, and she's like, what's up? And I said, I wanted to say, I just don't know what's wrong with me, but I just started crying. I just bawled my eyes out. And she's like, okay, I think we're going to be here a while. And it was one of those kind of shoulder shaking cries, you know, where it's like someone has opened a tap and it just pours out. And eventually I sort of stopped crying. It was one of those real ugly cries as well, you know, that they never show in movies. The snot, everything going. Eventually I got it together, and I said, I'm so overwhelmed, and I'm burnt out, and I just have nothing left in the tank. And I'll never forget what she said to me. She just looked at me in the eye, and she said, me too.
That's 55
She
quid.
said, I'm absolutely stressed out of my mind. I was like, what? She said, yeah, there's about eight patients out there. I don't know how I'm going to get through the day. I was like, just the two of us are sitting there, and I was like, no, I came to you for the help. He's like, okay, well, do you want to sit up on the bed? And I'll write you a prescription. But it was just one of those moments, and I thought, oh my God, this is where we are in the world right now. You know, we're just a load of burned out, overwhelmed people, and it doesn't matter whether you're a GP or whether you're a radio guy or a comedian, whatever it is, there'll be moments in all our lives when we are going to feel stressed out and burned out. And actually, that ended up being one of the most beautiful conversations I've ever had, you know, because it was that sort of, well, here we are, you know, and acceptance kicked off from there. And I went back to her, actually, in the last 3 weeks well, I won't tell you what I went for. It's actually, do you know what? I'll show you, all right? Can you believe my dog did that to me? But I had a chat with her, and I said, how are you doing? you know. And I was calling her my angel because at the time she went, I don't think there's anything physically wrong with you. This is psychological. And she recommended a psychologist. And that made a massive difference. If anyone is second guessing or shy about going to talk to somebody, it's one of the greatest gifts. I just see it like going to a really good mechanic, you know. If you've no clue how your own car, your own engine works, it's like opening the bonnet and they go, you see, when this is active here, this happens over here. And you're like, oh yeah, I never realized that. You start to see patterns and everything. So I call her my angel, and I was just saying, how are you getting on? How is your stress levels? You know, and she said, well, I only work 2 days a week now. My son runs the surgery because he's a GP, and I spend the rest of my time in Paris. And she's just living the life, you know. Yeah, so that just goes to show, even when you go to the doctor, they're no help at all. Just when you need them, they go off to France.
So, my question is, Dermot, who's your last guest that you'd have for the dinner party?
Do you know what? I'll have a think about it and I'll text you all after the show. I'm conscious that have any of you got babysitters at home? No, just let them run around. You saw what happened when you do that. Did you hide the cans of spray paint? Okay, well look, thank you all so much for coming out this evening. I want you to give a beautiful round of applause for our fantastic guests from the You Must Be Jokin podcast. Willa White, Eric Lalor,